Good day to you. God bless you. Say, welcome to the Shepherd's Chapel. Welcome to this family Bible study hour. We're ready to get back in our Father's Word. We're going to do chapter 29, pick it up about verse 12 here in a moment. We've got Jacob about ready to take a wife, sent by his mother with his father's approval, Isaac, to take a wife. That was basically part of the excuse. The main excuse was to get him away from his brother Esau, who had sworn he would kill him. Okay, and that will come into play one more time or so in the book of Genesis. But he arrived there, and they had such poor management about tending the sheep. They had this thing of gathering at the well at the time the sheep should be fed. And it makes you think maybe some of those people were kind of lonely and liked to talk a lot more than they did take care of sheep. And Jacob, when he arrived, and Rachel, this beautiful daughter of his uncle Laban, with her sheep, he hossed that stone off that well, watered her sheep, and they went home and let the sheep graze more. So that's being the kind of person he was. Hey, be successful. That's what our Father intended us to do. Father gave us what we need to be successful with in whatever profession you choose. Do it. Okay, so with that having been said, chapter 29, verse 12, we pick it up just after the sheep have been watered, and Jacob carries a conversation on with Rachel. 12, and it reads with a word of wisdom from our Father. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's brother, and that he was Rebekah's son, and she ran and told her father. Now, granddad, great-granddad, and all that doesn't carry in Hebrew, okay? It meant that he was of her father's household. He was a nephew, to be more exact, okay? He was a son of Laban's sister, Rebekah. Okay, verse 13. And it came to pass when Laban heard the tidings of Jacob, his sister's son, that he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house, and he told Laban all these things. Now, Laban is a good old boy, but he's a Sharpie too, you know. He would use deception if it bettered his being in life, all right? And what's wrong with that? Well, as long as it isn't too bad, I guess that's the way some people are. 14. And Laban said to him, surely thou art my bone and my flesh. And he abode with him the space of a month. And old Laban's looking this situation over, you can rest assured, through that 30-day period. And he can see this boy's got it. He watered those sheep. He hossed that stone where it would take more than one away from that well. And he could take care of things. I mean, he's a good person to have around, especially if he had God's blessings like Jacob did. Verse 15. And Laban said unto Jacob, because thou art my brother, shouldest thou therefore serve me for naught? Question. Tell me, what shall thy wages be? In other words, he wants now a contract. He wants to secure this lad and get things nailed down, because it's obvious he's more than worth his hire. Verse 16, and Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. And of course, as we stated in the last lecture, Rachel means ewe as a little lamb, all right? A beautiful name. But then Leah means weary-eyed or weak-eyed. It could be translated also in Hebrew, okay? So, which means she didn't sparkle like Rachel did, but she was a good person still, all in all. And why did they name her that? Well, that's the way people are named, okay? 18. And Jacob loved Rachel and said, I will serve thee 7 years for Rachel, thy younger daughter. And I mean, it was customary that you paid a dowry for a wife, and this would, 7 years would, that was the amount of time that in Israel you worked to free a slave. Not that she was a slave, nor was he, but it was more than fair, okay? Verse 19, and Laban said, it is better that I give her to thee than I should give her to another man. Abide with me. You live with me. Hey, you got a deal, all right? Verse 20, and Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed unto him but a few days for the love he had to her. I mean, the time just flew when he could just be around her. It just made him feel good all over. Verse 21, and Jacob said unto Laban, give me my wife, for my days are fulfilled that I may go in unto her. I've been here 7 years. This is it. Payday. Okay. Verse 22, and Laban gathered together all the men of the place and made a feast. Now, he was wealthy himself, and Jacob was making him more wealthy still, because everything Jacob touched was successful. Do you know why? Because God was with him. He was very pleasing to God. Verse 23, and it came to pass in the evening that he took Leah his daughter and brought her to him, and he went in unto her. Now at the wedding, the heavy veils and probably the wine was flowing a little bit, and this is kind of neat in a way, because just the way Jacob deceived his own father, because his father couldn't see, he was blind. And at his mother's advice, he puts the goat skin on and claims to be Esau because of the hairy arms. And Jacob had deceived his father Isaac real big time. Well, here, as it would be, he has the same thing done to him. Is it covert? Well, kind of in a way. But at the same time, Laban is a Sharpie. Naturally, he's going to plead customs of the area that there was no way you could marry off the younger daughter when the elder daughter was still at home, okay? It didn't work that way. So he sends in Leah, and he's with Leah on the wedding night, and what happens the next morning, 24, and Laban gave unto his daughter Leah Zipporah means trickling, all right? His maid for a handmaid. Verse 25, and it came to pass that in the morning, behold, I mean, finally it dawned on old Jacob, I have been deceived. And naturally, as I forestated, just like he deceived his dad, it was Leah. And he said to Laban, what is this thou hast done unto me? Did not I serve thee for Rachel? That was the deal. That was the agreement. Wherefore then hast thou beguiled me? Why have you tricked me? Why have you treated me this way? I mean, 7 years I slaved for you. For Rachel, I made it clear. Verse 26. Laban's cool, listen to him. And Laban said, it must not be so done in our country. It's not our custom to give the younger before the firstborn. It doesn't work that way, okay? This is the pretext for the reason that Leah was in the wedding rather than Rebekah, okay? 27. Fulfill her week, speaking of Leah. I mean, she's the first fruit. This is her week. You spend that with her, and we will give thee this also for the service which thou shalt serve with me yet 7 other years. I want to get 7 more years out of you out of this deal. So that did not understand this. Jacob did not have to wait 7 years to receive Rachel, but he had to wait at least the wedding week until it was completed. And then at that time, he could receive Rachel, but he would have to work another 7 years to pay her dowry as well. 28, and Jacob did so. He honored it, okay, and fulfilled her week, and he gave him Rachel his daughter to wife also. So verse 29, and Laban gave to Rachel his daughter Bilhah, that means bashful or timid, his handmaid to be her maid. Verse 30, and I think this documents that he loved his daughters. He wanted them taken care of. Verse 30, and he went in also unto Rachel, and he loved also Rachel more than Leah, okay, and served with him yet 7 other years. Now, this creates a problem for Leah knows that she is not loved as much as Rachel. And I'm sure that people had done things that were partial, that showed partiality because of the brightness of Rachel, and poor Leah was weak-eyed, you know. So it had to hurt some. 31, and when the Lord saw that Leah was hated, this would be better translated loved less, okay? Jacob certainly did not hate her, all right? He opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. When God saw that she was neglected, that she was loved less, he touched her. And this was God's doing, all right? This will bring about, of course, the 12 patriarchs, which make up the house of Israel. Verse 32, and Leah conceived and bare a son, and she called his name Reuben, for she said, surely the Lord hath looked upon my affliction. Now therefore my husband will love me. So here with Reuben, which means behold a son, or I have a son, okay? And 33, and she conceived again, being Leah, and bare a son, and said, behold, the Lord hath heard that I was hated, that I was loved less, that I was neglected. He hath therefore given me this son also. And she called his name Simeon, which means, being translated, hearing. God heard her, in other words, all right? Verse 34, and she conceived again and bare a son, and said, now this time will my husband be joined unto me. This is important because this is how the children were named. You understand the word joined? Okay? Because I have borne him 3 sons, therefore was his name called Levi. And of course, Levi, being the priest line, means joined. That's what you say in the Hebrew tongue when you say the word Levi. Verse 35, and she conceived again. You will notice that the offspring born to Jacob were usually in pairs, okay? This completes the second pair to Leah, okay? And she conceived again and bare a son, and she said, now will I praise the Lord. Therefore she called his name Judah and left bearing. In other words, she was barren after that. So here she gives birth to Judah, which means praise. And of course, Judah would be the king line. So here we have the birthing and the beginning of the 12 tribes, which would make up and would be called Israel. And let me assure you that you must never make the mistake of calling all of Israel by one tribe. That won't fly. That won't cut it. It takes all 12 to make up the house, the natural house of Israel. Normally, there was a split between Judah and Israel. It hasn't happened yet, of course, but it will. And they are still separate to this day. The one is called the house of Israel, the other is the house of Judah. A great error that scholars make is not to be aware of that, It will be all the way to the prophecy given in Ezekiel chapter 37 before he takes one stick that is broken and joined the stick back together, and all Israel shall be one. And of course that happens at the seventh trump. Chapter 30, let's continue right on with it, same thought. And when Rachel saw that she bare Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister. This is always, envy always opens for trouble. And she said unto Jacob, give me children or else I die. I am grieved here. I can't handle this. 2, and Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel. And he said, am I in God's stead, who hath withheld from thee the fruit of the womb? In other words, you ask him. Jacob wasn't too worried about himself because Leah had given him 4 sons. It's obvious it was not he that was barren. Verse 3, and she said, behold my maid Bilhah, go in unto her, and she shall bear upon my knees, that I may also have children by her. That they would, the Hebrew is that they would be built by her for me. Okay, adopting, in other words, for. And she gave him Bilhah, her handmaid, to wife. And Jacob went in unto her. You notice, old Jacob didn't seem to complain a whole lot about how this all went down. He seemed to obey what he was told to do. 5. And Bilhah conceived and bare Jacob a son. 6. And Rachel said, God hath judged me, and hath also heard my voice, and hath given me a son. Therefore called she his name Dan. And of course, Dan means judging. All right? Verse 7. And Bilhah, Rachel's maid, conceived again. You might make a note, always in pairs. Always came forth in pairs. She conceived again and bare Jacob a second son. 8. And Rachel said, with great wrestlings have I wrestled with my sister. I mean, she was not a happy camper with Leah, but she still didn't hate her. I cannot believe that, okay? And I have prevailed. And she called his name Naphtali, which Naphtali being translated means my wrestling, my wrestling. Verse 9. And when Leah saw that she had left bearing, she took Zilpah, her maid, and gave her Jacob to wife. 10. And Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Jacob a son. 11. And Leah said, a troop cometh. And she called his name Gad. And of course, Gad means a troop. I am sure that God wanted these 12 offspring to make up the patriarchs. Verse 12. And Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Jacob a second son. Here they are in pairs. 13. And Leah said, happy am I, for the daughters will call me blessed. And she called his name Asher, which means happy. Now we're going to there will be, Leah will yet bear a daughter, if I remember right. Will we get to it in this lecture? I don't know. Maybe we will. I think so. 14. And Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest and found mandrakes in the field, and brought them unto his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, give me, I pray thee, of thy son's mandrakes. Now, these mandrakes in this place sometimes were called Satan's apples and so forth, but they appeared very much like a man, and I'll say no more about it. It's supposed to be very effective in making one healthy. Verse 15. And she said unto her, is it a small matter that thou hast taken my husband? And wouldest thou take away my son's mandrakes also? I mean, there was hard feelings between the sisters, that's obvious. And Rachel said, therefore he shall lie with thee tonight for thy son's mandrakes. In other words, I will see that Jacob is in your tent tonight instead of mine, but I want the mandrakes. 16, and Jacob came out of the field in the evening, and Leah went out to meet him and said, thou must come in unto me, for surely I have hired thee with my son's mandrakes. And he lay with her that night. Again, old Jacob never complained to the girls. 17, and God hearkened unto Leah, and she conceived, and bare Jacob the 5th son. 18, and Leah said, God hath given me my hire, because I have given my maiden to my husband. And she called his name Issachar. And of course, naturally, you know what Issachar is in the Hebrew tongue, my hire. Okay? In verse 19, and Leah conceived again and bare Jacob the 6th son, always in pairs. 20, and Leah said, God hath endued me with a good dowry. Now will my husband dwell with me, because I have borne him 6 sons. And she called his name Zebulun, and Zebulun, of course, means dwelling. Now here, through this one Leah, the first daughter that he had wed by trickery of Laban, has given him has personally birthed 6 of the sons that make up the patriarchs, called the house of Israel. Verse 21. And afterwards she bare a daughter, and called her name Dinah. Vindication or judgment on Dinah. Okay? Dinah was loved by her brothers. Okay? 22. And God remembered Rachel. Finally. And God hearkened to her and opened her womb. It would seem that our Father always, on these special births, a sign of divine action on his part. Verse 23, and she conceived, Rachel finally conceived, and bare a son, and said, God hath taken away my reproach. Now I want you to know one thing, and I want you to learn a lesson real good. The mandrakes didn't do it. Anytime you start messing around with stuff like that, you're wasting your time. Okay? It is God that blesses. Verse 24, and she called his name Joseph, and said, the Lord shall add to me another son. And of course, adding being the name, and God would give her another son. They were in pairs, but little would it be known to her that in their travel that the second son would be Benjamin, which she would name Ben-Ami, being interpreted, son of my sorrow, because she would be at Judah, Bethlehem. And Benjamin would be born at Bethlehem, the same city that Christ was born in. In other words, the last of the patriarchs was born in the same city that Jesus Christ would be born. This is the lineage in which we're building many years later. But the reason she would call him Ben-Ami, son of my sorrow, is because she died in childbirth, in giving birth to that second son. Jacob would later change his name to Benjamin, and unfortunately he would show favoritism to Joseph and Benjamin, the same as he showed favoritism to their mother Rachel. Verse 25, and it came to pass when Rachel had borne Joseph, excuse me, that Jacob said unto Laban, send me away, that I may go unto mine own place and to my country. It's time for me, I've worked these years, it's time for me to go back to my own. Verse 26, give me my wives and my children for whom I have served thee, and let me go, for thou knowest my service which I have done thee. Now, Laban has been made rich by Jacob's service. I mean, Jacob took over the herdsmen and so forth, and man, they have got sheep galore. They're extremely wealthy. How many of them belong to Jacob? Zippo, none. He accomplished this work to gain his family. Verse 27, and Laban said unto him, I pray thee, if I have found favor in thine eyes, tarry, stay on with us, for I have learned by experience that the Lord hath blessed me for thy sake. In other words, he was smart enough to know that it wasn't for Laban's sake that God had blessed him. It was because Jacob was blessed. 28, and he said, appoint me thy wages, and I will give it. I mean, I promise, whatever you say, I will give it. 29, and he said unto him, thou knowest how I have served thee, and how thy cattle was with me. You know I took good care of them. 30, for it was little which thou hadst before I came. Very little. Little old Rachel was taking care of them all by herself. And it is now increased unto a multitude. And the Lord hath blessed thee since my coming. And now, when shall I provide for mine own house also? In other words, it's time for me to move on or think about building up my own house. 31, and he said, what shall I give thee? And Jacob said, thou shalt not give me anything. If thou wilt do this thing for me, I will again feed and keep thy flock. Boy, will he keep and feed his flock, all right? But before it's all over with, Jacob will own a whole bunch of them, all right? 32, animal husbandry. This is probably one of the first cases in the Bible where animal husbandry came into action, okay? Verse 32, I will pass through all thy flock today, removing from thence all the speckled and spotted cattle and all the brown cattle among the sheep, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and of such shall be my hire. In other words, I'll go in there and I'll mark them. They're all mine. The pure white ones, they're all yours, Laban. Laban, even in the Hebrew tongue, means white. 33. So shall my righteousness answer for me in time to come, when it shall come for my hire before thy face, you be the judge. Every one that is not speckled and spotted among the goats, and brown among the sheep, they shall be counted stolen with me. If one of them, if you've got one that isn't, if I've got one in my herd that isn't speckled or marked or ring-necked, then I stole it. It's yours because it's pure white. In other words, we don't have to brand them. We can tell the difference here. You'll know that it's yours when they're pure white. Verse 34, and Laban said, behold, I would it might be according to thy word. I mean, he thought through this, and he thought, okay, we'll do this. But now watch what he does. Verse 35, and he removed, Laban, removed that day the he-goats that were ring-straked and spotted, and all the she-goats that were speckled and spotted, and every one that had some white in it, and all the brown among the sheep, and gave them into the hand of his sons. In other words, you get them on out of here, way over there. Okay, 36, and he set 3 days' journey betwixt himself and Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flocks. In other words, Laban fixed it up so they couldn't mix. Now, anyone knows that if you have a speckled ram, a spotted ram, the ewe, even if she is not spotted, will have some spotted offspring. Okay. So Laban is, like I say, he's a Sharpie. He said, I want them separated so they can't mix, and I don't have to worry about getting. There won't be too many more of those speckled and spotted ones. Not in my herd. 37. And Jacob took him rods of green poplar and of the hazel and chestnut tree, and peeled white streaks in them, and made the white appear which was in the rods. In other words, he peeled them down, okay? 38, and he set the rods which he had peeled before the flocks in the gutters in the watering troughs, when the flocks came to drink, that they should conceive when they came to drink. Now, a lot of people say, well, what in the world did the poplar and chestnuts, what did that wood have to do with the sheep conceiving? Absolutely nothing, except it was a corral. And old Laban in that corral kept a big spotted ram, okay, and a speckled he-goat. And every time a ewe came in heat, when she had to go through that corral to get the water to drink, and naturally she conceived, all right? But guess what she conceived by? Even though the main herd is split, Jacob has nothing down here but rams that are speckled and he-goats spotted, okay, the males. Got it? Wood has nothing to do with it. That's how he made his corrals. Verse 30, as I said, this is be your first in the Bible of animal husbandry, basically. 39, and the flocks conceived before the rods and brought forth cattle ring-straked, speckled, and spotted. You know, you're going to have some teachers that are going to say, those rods did it. The rods didn't have anything to do with it. God, you see, God is in this, okay? Jacob didn't dream this all up on himself. God told him what to do. You'll find that out. And God knows exactly how to, if God is with you, you're not going to have any trouble being quiet. One more verse and we'll stop for this day. Verse 40, and Jacob did separate the lambs and set the faces of the flocks toward the ring-straked and all the brown in the flock of Laban, and he put his own flocks by themselves and put them not unto Laban's cattle. I mean, he's increasing big time, okay? He's practicing, but again, as I stated, you'll find out in, I believe it's the next chapter, that God showed him in a vision how to do this. So is it deception? Kind of in a way, we've got a little covert activity going on here. Laban's a Sharpie, but Jacob's a Sharpie as well. When it comes to taking care of himself and doing what is right, Jacob, well, there are some people who would say, well, wasn't that crooked? No, it was smart, okay? It was real smart. Let me ask you a question. What would Laban have had Jacob not come his way? He would still have a very small flock going along with the procedure that the husbandmen and drivers were utilizing to feed and multiply sheep by gathering at the water hole and visiting all day, where the sheep need to eat to be healthy. Anyway, Laban is way ahead of the game simply because Jacob is there. And Jacob is still, he made a fair deal. Laban agreed to it. So there you have it. Don't miss the next lecture. All right, bless your heart, you listen a moment, won't you please?